Okay, so what we're going to take a look at here is we're going to try and do some card coding and some debugging specifically by taking a look at the unit tests and how we can set that up. Have you happened to check your code in at all here, Tunadan?
Check my code in where?
So you've made that card. Did you check it in on Git, or have you just done things locally without?
I've done everything locally
Okay,
as
all
of
right.
the moment.
In that case,
Uh,
I'll just
I have
take
not
your.
figured out how to upload to Git.
Okay, well, we can walk you through that at some point. But for now, I'll just copy paste the code that you had put in, and then we'll sort of recreate what you've done. Okay, so on cards, we've got PC. So I guess you've made a new folder. Set to, and then we'll create a new file, paste that in, and save it as. Save this as v2elven.hjson. Okay, so we've got Haldir here, which is being set up for. Let me grab my card up folder. My PC doesn't like it when I leave it on all day,
Hmm.
and it is complaining because I switched over from the other monitor setup that I have. Okay. All right, so we've got this Haldir here. While Haldir bears a ranged weapon, each valiant elf is strength +1 and does not add to the Fellowship Archer total. Each time an elven possession is about to be discarded by a card effect, you may exert Haldir to prevent that, and he's valiant. Okay, so there's 3 different things that we will need here. You've got the keyword valiant, you've got the effects array, and it looks like we have 3. You've got 3 different effects on here.
Yeah, that bottom effect needs to be tabbed to the left one, though. I'm just noticing that now. That
Yeah,
effect,
hang on. Let
yeah,
me change all these to tabs. And yeah, you're right. Wait a minute.
yeah, because effect should be, I think.
So
Yeah.
at the moment, I think all of these are lined up properly.
Oh,
Um,
yes, right. I'm
Now
just
this
confused.
does not add to archery total. That should be. Let's see here. Each valiant elf is strength +1 and does not add to the fellowship archery total. So that actually needs to be part of. Okay, well, we will figure that out. Actually, I think it's fine that it's in this state because this is gonna help us demonstrate how exactly we're going to use the unit test to our advantage. So I am going to grab my script here real quick. I should have had it open before. While I'm waiting on that to load, I will go into our PC website over here. Or yeah, it's the one spreadsheet rule model. That's where all the things are, right?
Yes.
I'm gonna grab this ID. Card importer, I believe. So this here, just for those watching the video, I have a script that I have written that allows me to take the Nandex sheets that we use, and I can turn it into both boilerplate for the JSON cards themselves and boilerplate for the unit tests, which makes things straightforward.
Yeah,
So,
you can at least get the cards into Gemp to an extent so that you
right,
can see the hollow images and whatnot and know that they're in there somewhere and start testing them.
right. So I just need to come
And
here.
I won't have to code every single card by hand.
Right.
At least all the way.
Okay, so since I don't think we've done this particular one before, I'll just wipe out this folder anyway. Okay, so when I run this, that's just going to take that Google Sheet that I handed it, and then it should be taking, assuming we don't have an error here. Oh dear. Error converting. What?
Everything generated fine.
Yeah, I've alright. Hang on. Let me see here. Why is it trying to... Oh, of course it happens now. This had always run fine in the past. Okay, well, I'm gonna have to debug that later. We don't have a whole lot of time here, so I'm just gonna do some copy paste work if I can't use that. So I'm gonna go ahead and grab Gimli here. We'll copy him. We'll add a new folder. Oh yeah, they call them packages. Set vo2, and I know that this is all stuff that you have already done on your end.
No, so, not quite.
Okay. Well, so we are now going to be doing set v2 card 5, and then earlier today I had sent you a modified version of this. Let's see here. Where I took Gimli and I just very quickly did some changes to make it Haldir. Yeah. Come on. That's not what I said. What is... Oh, Control R. For search replace, change that to Haldir. We should be good, I think. Yeah, so we've got no more errors in that. All right, so just to sort of go over this real quickly. So what the unit tests are going to be doing is that at the very top here, it's going to be defining a deck that you're going to be using for testing. And then you're going to have a series of functions in which you literally just kind of run through all of the functionality of the card. So my boilerplate, obviously we didn't have it here because the this still has Gimli stuff that we copy pasted, but it will generate one function for us where it will automatically specify all the details of the card from the spreadsheet, and it will compare and make sure that we encoded all of those properly in our JSON, which again, when the script is working, it generates this part for us so that we don't have to worry about those little specifics. And then we have an example function that doesn't do much, and we can take it from there and create as many copies of this as we need to and test each of the individual aspects of the card. So just to demonstrate this, we've got our test now. I'm going to go ahead and just right click on this and hit run.
It would be really embarrassing if it works perfectly fine for you and not for me.
Oh, I highly doubt it will. Looking at this, well, actually, I guess there's nothing wrong with the bits that it's testing right now. That will be once we get down to the rest of it. I can see some errors in the code there. But that's fine.
If it's on the stats and keywords and under the first class.
Right. And so when you go to run this, what it's going to be doing is it's going to be recompiling Gemp, and if needed, and then it's going to, as you can see here in the output down here, it's going to be loading all of the cards from all of the sets, So there, we've got an error. So that's actually the error that we had before, that me and you already debugged earlier today. But so this process of loading the Java cards takes a long time. That only takes a very long time the very first time that you run the tests in one session, but then they'll all be cached and it'll be much faster. So while we're waiting for that to happen, let's go ahead and take a look at the error here. So it says unable to load card 1025, and it says unrecognized field amount. And so in the JSON, there are very specific things that you have to do when you are laying it out. So I have this document here, the JSON specification, that tells us, where did that actually come from? That defines for us what the exact fields are for just about everything. So if I come down here to modifiers, for instance, we can see that if you want to use the add no twilight for companion move modifier, you also have to include a filter. And so hopping back over to our JSON, what it's complaining about here is the amount. And we can check and see what it's complaining about by taking a look at the JSON here. If we come all the way to the very top, there is a, yes, we know. At the very top, there is a section for game text types. And so one of these is going to be modifier, which if we take a look at our JSON, whoops. So we are using something that is of a type modifier. So that's where this is described. The only parameter that it takes is a subchild of a modifier. So it doesn't have anything that tells us what to do with this amount. So we're going to go ahead and take that out for now. So if we hop back over here and rerun it, now that we have changed the HJSON file there, you'll see that this is going to be going through much faster. But we can already tell with this exception up here that there is something else that has gone wrong. So if we scroll back up, we'll see value not defined. And so it has some issue with one of the various things that is trying to evaluate a value. So let's take a look and see if we can't figure this out. One of the things that I will frequently do while I'm testing is I will comment out sections that I'm not actively using so that I can be sure. Oops, don't want to undo that. No, never mind. Yeah, that should be done. So that we can be sure that it's not something that we're not currently paying attention to. This is actually one of the main reasons I went to HJSON, because regular JSON does not support comments. And the alternative there, if you don't have comment support, is to just delete stuff and hope that you find it. Okay, so we're still getting value not defined, even though I commented out those other things. So we know that it's up here in this section. So let's go ahead and take a look at modify strength and see what it takes. So we have a filter, an amount, and a requires. So filter and requires, but amount is actually a required field here. So it looks like all we had that was a problem, whoops, was that amount field that I took out. Where the heck is it in my, whatever, I guess I'll have to retype it. I swear I hit Control X to cut it. So it's missing.
Do you want it? Oh, yeah, under requires. Go ahead.
Yeah.
You can ignore me.
Filter, amount, requires, yeah. And it doesn't really matter where we put it. It's all really just for good communication's sake. So yeah.
The type does stay up there.
Yep. Yeah. So the
modify
type,
strength.
Yeah, correct. So this is how you know what kind of modifier it is. This is telling it, I want you to look for the modify strength section in here. And in fact, we can come over here to, there's a modifier source factory. All it's going to be doing is it's got this giant list of things that it supports. So it's going to look for modify strength in this list, and then it's going to look for this particular object, and this particular object takes a filter, a requires, and an amount. And so this is, like, on the bare bones, this is actually what it's doing. Yeah, I guess I should say that type is always a required field. It's not going to be mentioned in all the others because it's how it looks up what to do with all the rest. So let's save it, and then we will just go ahead and rerun that test. This is going to happen a lot. Like, it's just kind of how the process goes. And I have squashed the window. We've got another issue. Unknown race definition and filter, Elven. All right. So in this case, it's actually race elf.
Oh.
The culture is
Oh,
called
right.
Elven.
Culture would be Elven.
Yeah, but the actual race itself is elf. And so for filter issues, I try to make it as as verbose as possible here. But if you ever find issues with filters, there's a filters section, and you can come in here to find out what is legitimate. So, for instance, it lists out that all card types, all keywords, all races, and then it gives you a list specifically of what's allowed. And so in our case, it's elf. And then if we were going to be doing a culture, then we would have to come in and tell it a culture, and then in parentheses, we would say Elven. Okay, so now that that is fixed, now we'll just run it again. See if there's still any bugs. Yep, there's
Yeah, I
another
ran
one.
it and I got another bug.
Unknown race filter in elf. Do not use race for race. Oh, you know what? Yeah, so actually I think it told me right there I was not supposed to use that. So when you use elf, it's just supposed to be by itself. The race function.
That's interesting.
Yeah, so races are on their own. Culture is wrapped, and I think the only reason that was there was because you have the conflict between the race of orc and the culture orc, and so the only way to differentiate it is one of them has to be marked, and he chose cultures. But so if we come over to the function filter, and we come down to race, we'll see here that this is not for actual races. This is a couple of additional functionalities related to race. So for instance, if you put race cannot spot, then this is for cards like the 9 walkers that does such and such. It matches cards who have a race that cannot be spotted on the table. So like that is yeah, it's kind of funky in this case, but this is just only these two things. If you're not putting stored or cannot spot, then race is not a valid input. All right, so we've changed that to just elf. And now,
yeah, I changed it, and the test is telling me it's all good now.
Awesome. Well, in that case, we should get ourselves a nice green check mark over here. So when tests run, there's one of 3 different things you can get. You can get a green check mark, which means that all of your tests ran successfully and passed their tests. You can get red, like we were before, which is indicating that there's been an exception of some sort. In our case, the exception was card not found because the card was failing very basic compilation errors. And then the alternate thing that you might get is you might get a yellow, which indicates that one of your tests was incorrect. So for instance here, if I were to say that actually we want, well, not resistance, let's say that we actually, Haldur's strength is supposed to be 7. I'm going to go ahead and run this, and then it's going to check, and it's going to pull this up where we have defined his strength as 6. Then the assert equals here is going to fail because it's going to discover that 7 is not the same thing as 6. And yeah, we get the little yellow mark. And so this tells us that it expected to find 7, but instead it found 6. And this is going to be predominantly, hopefully, how our tests keep ourselves from messing things up. So let's go ahead and hop down here. We're going to make a new unit test for Haldir to check what he should be doing. So while Haldir bears a ranged weapon, each valiant elf is strength +1 and does not add to the fellowship archery total.
Just a quick question.
Oh, sure.
This is the same Java file that we've been doing our other tests in. That we just did the one.
Yep.
Okay.
Yeah. So we're going to all the tests for a particular card, I try as much as possible to keep it in one place. So if you were to hop over and look at one of the other ones, you'll see that many of them will only have one test if that's all it needs. But if the card is more complicated, you might have multiple functions. So for instance, that 2 Eyes requires both Frodo and Gandalf, versus 2 Eyes draws based on Frodo's vitality. So it's testing 2 different things. And each of them was given a separate function just to make it a little easier. But most cards, unless it has 0 game text on it, will have at least one test beyond the stat test up here. Okay, so this demonstrates a very basic test. So first we grab the scenario. That should just be varm. It grabs the generic test case helper, which is this up here, which defines our scenario, which is to say that it holds the deck and it has a bunch of other functions that is going to be useful to us. And then we are going to make various definitions to hold the cards that we want to deal with. So there are a couple of functions for that. There's get freeps card, and there's also get shadow card. That is just going to be referencing back to this exact same deck up here. So you would just give it that same name. So in this case, yeah, we just want to grab a reference to the Haldir card that is actually going to be spawned by the game itself. And then we can do some setup before we actually start the game itself. So here, I'm going to go ahead and put Haldir in my hand. But I can also even go further than that, and I can say freeps. We're going to move a character to the table. Freeps move char to table, and we're just going to put Haldir on the table right from the start. So this is kind of cheating, right? This allows us to set things up in a way that doesn't require us to muck about with requirements. I don't have to deal with Twilight if I'm putting minions down. I can just arrange the board into a state that is so that we can test just the very specific thing that we're trying to figure out here.
Yeah, you can set up the fringe scenarios and whatnot.
Exactly, yeah. So you don't have to like have this random draw luck and stuff. You just stack the hand, stack the deck, stack the table, and get it to that exact situation that you're trying to make sure that things make sure that things operate the way that they're supposed to once they're in that state. But we don't have to deal with actually getting to that state. And then once you've arranged things thoroughly, you can go to start game. If you happen to be in a context where you need to do expanded stuff, then at that point you have to do some funky stuff with getting the sites all set up and everything. But if it's just a regular Fellowship game, then this just begins the game. It will automatically bid 0 for both sides, or actually no, never mind. It automatically bids 1 for the Free People's player, and then makes them go first, and then you just begin the game at the first Fellowship phase. After this point, everything that you do needs to be kosher as far as the client actions are concerned. So you have to be thinking about what happens in a game. At this point, I will be offered free Fellowship actions, and so either I need to perform Fellowship actions or I need to pass, right? And so there's going to be a whole bunch of functions within the scenario here that will help us perform those decisions and tell the server what exactly it is that we're doing. So if I take a look here, while Haldir bears a ranged weapon, each Valiant Elf is strength +1. It does not add to the Fellowship Archer total. So right now, Haldir is strength 6, so we're going to use him. I think he's the only Valiant Elf that we have at the moment. So we are just going to test himself getting affected by that particular clause. And so actually, I'm going to go one further, and I'm going to put another elf in here. We're just going to put Greenleaf, who I believe is 150. I have another thing over here that I'll use to check that.
That would be 150, 1_50.
Yep. Yeah, 1_50, and I'm just...
That's a string.
Yes. Yeah, so that, yeah, he's card 1R50, but Gemp doesn't deal with the rarities, so we just put an underscore, and yeah, that's just the ID that it is used. That is used for it. Why is there a red line showing up here? That's obnoxious. Anyway, so make sure that you change the marker there if you do copy paste it, and then this move characters to table can take multiple things, so I can tell it put both Haldir and Greenleaf on the table, and then we're going to start the game. And we're going to, first of all, double check and make sure that their strengths are what we expect. So both Haldir and Greenleaf should be strength of 6. And then I'm going to go ahead and just run this test to make sure that we don't have anything that is busted before now. So one thing that you can do if you're just trying to test a particular function and you don't want to do everything on here, you can right click anywhere in the body and go to run Haldir test 1. And that will run just that function. And so that's what I've done here.
Okay.
So only the one function has ran, and it came back flawlessly. So yeah, we have Greenleaf on the table, we have a Haldir on the table, and their strength was 6 for each of them. So now we're going to need one more thing. We're going to need to find ourselves a bow so that we can attach it. And so it looks like Elven Bow is 141. So we're going to go ahead and grab that. There's a lot of copy pasting when doing this. Now the bow we want to put in the hand as opposed to putting it on the table. So we're going to say scenario.freeps hand, and the autocomplete helps us to move card to hand. So we're going to put the bow in the hand while these two are on the table. All right, and then after, so bow doesn't have any plus strength, so we don't have to worry about that. So after we have checked and made sure that Haldir and Greenleaf are strength 6, then we are going to say scene.freeps play card. So right now it is waiting for the Free People's player to make a decision during the fellowship phase. So we are going to tell it that the action we want to do is we want to play the bow that is currently in the hand. Now, if we didn't put the bow in the hand, this would result in an error because it would, you normally can't run into this in Gemp when you're just on the client. But since we are directly going to the server, we're telling the server do this action that can't occur, and you end up with an exception that completely crashes the whole thing. So once we have played the bow, if we have coded things right, each Valiant Elf is strength +1 and does not add to the Fellowship Archer total. So we should now end up with a Haldir that is strength 7. So let's go ahead and test that theory. All right, so now we'll just go ahead and rerun.
You should also, well, you're running it, but you should also check that Greenleaf still has 6 strength.
Yes, absolutely correct. And I can go ahead and edit this here while it's running. It will only run the most recent one. Okay, so now we have an assertion error. Expected 7, actual 6. So something in our text here is not actually performing it correctly. So let's take a look. Modifiers. So if you can spot a ranged weapon, so let's double check can spot. It has a count and it has a filter. And the filter is ranged weapon, which I do believe. Yeah, I mean, I think that that's correct. I just want to double check on the filters list. So unloaded keywords. Ranged weapon. Does it have to have a space? It might need to have a space.
Yeah, that might work. Is it case sensitive too?
Sometimes it does, sometimes it isn't. I've given up trying to figure out when it always is, so that is one of the things that I'll mess with just to see. And so now we'll go ahead and rerun this and see if that's all it took. Because I think, just looking at this, this looks approximately correct. We've got a conditional modifier that only goes into play when this particular requires clause is true. But it's still not coming up. So here's the next thing I'm going to try. I am going to comment this section out and double check and make sure that it's just our requires that is messed up, and see if now this makes it so that we have a constant modifier that is always making all Valiant Elves strength +1. And so if that's the case, then we should see here that instead of failing down here, because it does highlight here, telling us exactly what line it failed on, we should see it fail up here, because Haldir, a Valiant Elf, should be made... Yep, there it goes. All right. And another thing, too, is you can always double-click on your result here, and it will zoom right to the line that caused the failure.
Okay, that's helpful.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Working in an IDE makes things so much better. Like, any of you people that are thinking that you can just get by with a text editor and just running stuff by the command line, no. IDEs are totally worth it. Okay, so we know that that portion is actually working. So, yeah, we knew that it was this requires section that must be busted somehow. So, yeah, it's got to be this basic
Should
filter.
the S in can spot be capitalized?
Nope, that part doesn't matter. I know that the capitalization on that doesn't work. And in fact, this is a part that would have blown up during compilation. It would have said cannot find requirement can spot if that part was messed up. So that part isn't it. So it's got to be something down to here, because filters can sometimes act a little act like you're not like they're not very specific sometimes, and having a filter, having something it doesn't recognize isn't always an error. I hope it's not this. The filters are far more rigid and brittle than most of the rest of this setup. Nope, so that's not it. Can spot one ranged weapon attached to self. And self is correct in this case. Alright, well let's just try, oh hang on. Oh, hang on. I know what's wrong. So, actually I want to demonstrate exactly what happened here. So, you have told Gemp, I want to play this elven bow. What's the very next thing it's going to ask you?
Where is it being played?
Where is it being played? So at the moment, the bow is actually in limbo. It's not attached to anybody. So actually, I think our code may have been working from the very start. So to demonstrate this, I want to take a look at the scenario object. So when you hit a breakpoint like this, when you click in the margin, you can tell it to, so in fact, let me back up here because I don't think I explained what I was doing. When you click in the margin here, you can create what's called a breakpoint, which you can run your code in such a way where it respects those breakpoints and will halt and wait for you to inspect the actual guts of what's happening right now. So instead of run, I'm going to tell it to debug, and that's going to tell it, okay, I want you to start respecting my breakpoints and slow down for me and get all this diagnostic information so that I can inspect it when I need to. So it is now halted here on this line before it has done the actual check so that we can inspect things and we can see how it's going. So I'm going to hop onto the scene, and I'm going to look at the game, or no, sorry, I'm going to look at the user feedback. And you can see up here that I've actually pinned this for my own use, so that you can right click on anything and you can go to pin to top, and it will make it so that you don't have to dig down into the guts for stuff if it's things that you're using all the time. So now I'm going to go into the awaiting decision map, and it tells us that it is waiting for player 1 to do something. So we'll keep digging into this. The value, it is looking for, and so this is the text being presented to the user right now. Attach elven bow, choose target to attach to. Gemp will automatically perform any decisions that it can, but because we have both Haldir and Greenleaf on the table, there are 2 valid options. So what we need to do is we'll go ahead and hit the stop button because we know that it's going to fail here. So after playing the bow, we need to tell it scene.freeps pick choose card. Haldir. So we're going to tell it we are choosing the Haldir card. That is the thing that we want to happen. So now I'll go ahead and hit run. And even though I still have that breakpoint there, hitting run means that we'll ignore my breakpoints and other debug information. So you can leave your breakpoints in place just in case. And there we go. We now have a green test.
There's no problems with the code.
Yep, no problems whatsoever. That that happens more often than I'd like to admit. And so that is almost one of the very first things that I test. The very first thing that I look at is try to see if there's any like very obvious typos for me to mess with and see if there's something that I can jiggle that way. But the very next thing that I almost always do is hop into the decision map and see what is the game actually waiting on. Because you might discover that you found yourself in the regroup phase. And in fact, let me just kind of demonstrate how you can find that. Oops, that kind of information. I accidentally hit run. Debug. Sometimes you'll find that like phases got skipped that you weren't expecting because your action did not define itself in the way that it needed to. So one of the other ones that I have on here is just the game. So I can inspect here. I can look for game state. That's the one that matters. And then we can see the current player ID, so we know that player 1 is the one currently playing, which always has the alias of Freeps in my test rig here. We can inspect and see what's in the current Twilight pool. So that could be getting in your way if you're trying to play minions and there's not enough Twilight. We can look at last messages is very useful. So this is the kind of stuff that goes into the log. So if you're trying to track exactly what happened, did I miss anything? It's in. Yeah, this is in regular log order. So you just come down to the bottom and you see that player 1 plays the Elven Bow, and he plays it on Haldir, and player 1 adds 1 to the Twilight pool because of the bow. So that's now the point that we're at right now. You can also get so far as to inspect. Let's see, where's the current phase? I know that there's a. Oh, there it is, current phase. So if we open this up, we'll see that it is currently the Fellowship phase. We might find ourselves in a phase that we're not expecting if we didn't quite get our setup exactly right. I can inspect people's hands, and I can look at, the hand of player 1, which at the moment has 0 cards in it, so there's not much useful information there. But I can look at the decks, and I can take a look at player 2 and see that he's got a deck of 3 cards in it, which, because players share the same deck, or rather they both have a copy of the same deck, we should find ourselves with a Haldir, a Greenleaf, and a Bow. So if I open this one up, we can see that this one has a blueprint ID of something something, but I can come to the blueprint and open it up, and we see that this is indeed Haldir, Nath Commander. So like that inspection is super handy for trying to figure out what exactly is going on, which, since we are dealing without a client, it can sometimes be a little bit of a mind twist trying to figure out what might be happening, but super useful when we need it. So let's just keep plugging away at this. So while Haldir bears a ranged weapon, each valiant alpha strength +1 and does not add to the Fellowship archery total. So next thing that we need to do is find ourselves a minion and throw it on the table, because you cannot get to the archery phase without a minion. So I'm just over here. I literally just have the wiki over here on my other window. So typically the one that I grab is the Goblin Runner, which is 178. And so we will just go ahead and put ourselves a runner. In there. And then I usually just set up another section here where we are going to also specify our shadow cards now. So if you ever copy paste these, keep in mind that get Freeps card and get shadow card are not the same thing. Both decks are going to have the same cards, so you have to be careful of this. We are specifically saying grab the runner from the shadow deck. If you try to grab the runner from the Free People's deck, you're not going to be able to play it out of turn, right? That's totally not going to work. So we need to now say shadow move char to table, and we will tell it to put the runner on the table. And so now this allows us to cheat a little bit. Again, we don't have to worry about Twilight. We don't have to worry about any of that. There's going to be a minion on the table, and so when it comes to the end of the shadow phase, it will see, oh, there's a minion, so we will now move on to the maneuver and the archery phase instead of skipping all the way to regroup. So now that we are at the end of our fellowship phase, let's go ahead and pass forward. Now you can say Freeps pass. Yeah, so you can say things like Freeps pass current phase action. You can do the same thing with the shadow if you wanted to do it that way. However, I also have a helper function that is just skip to phase. So we are just going to skip to the archery phase. And now that we're in the archery phase, we want to double check and make sure that Haldir does not no longer counts towards the Fellowship archery total. So now that we're in the archery phase, I believe that we can say scene.archery, get Freeps archery total. So what we're going to be doing here is we're going to say assert equals 1 Fellowship archery total. Now we have both Haldir with a bow and we have Greenleaf on the table, so that should be, normally that would be 2, but Haldir's game text should be removing his own contribution to the archery total. So let's go ahead and run that and see if it works.
Did you remember to uncomment that section?
Oh yeah. Absolutely, gonna have to do that. So yeah, we get here and we do the insertion and it fails because, again, yeah, like you said, that part was not in there. So this one requires the same. This needs the same requires, I think, because otherwise it's just always going to be the case, even when he's not. Oh shoot. Okay, so this is one of those effects, unfortunately, where I don't have the documentation ready, and so I can come over to the effect appender factory. If you just do a Control-Shift-F and you type that in, and then try to find something from where is it? So like effect appender factory, you'll find this enormous list of things, and once we're in here, we can then hold down Control and left click on does not add to archery total, and it will bring us right to that particular object where we can inspect it. So does not add to archery total gives us a count, a filter, and a memorize. So unfortunately, in this case, this is actually not the way that we're going to do this. This is more for permanent effects that are always in place, as opposed to situations that are variable. So I think what we're going to have to do is we're going to be adding a second modifier. And rather than using the effect or subaction, we're going to be looking for a modifier that does the same thing. Cancel bonus, can be assigned to, well, let's see. So we've got things for modifying the archery total directly, but we don't have anything. Okay, well this might literally be a case of something that is not yet exposed to the JSON. Sometimes we run into this where there's an effect that is coded in Gemp on the Java side, but it has not yet been given a proper endpoint for us to access it. So we need a modify, a does not add to archery total modifier, which is what's being manipulated here in the down below. So this might be a case, this is unfortunately going to be one of those cases where I'm probably going to have to get involved, although of course you are more than welcome to try to perform this process, where we are going to be adding a new entry to the modifier source factory, where it's basically going to be...
Where could I find that?
So the modify, well, that's going to be another case where you mentioned, so let's actually see if I can find the upper level. All right, so in the logic...
the Gemp LOTR logic?
Yeah, Gemp LOTR logic. It's going to have... Oh, let me... cards built. Okay. So if you drill down past all the main garbage, there's then a cards.build section. And this cards.build section is actually the part that manages the JSON loading. By the time we've arrived in here, this part is no longer used. This only happens at startup when the server first starts up, or when the server reloads the definitions of the JSON, and otherwise it's completely dormant. This is just going to translate all of the JSON into Java objects, so that they can be used at runtime. So in our case, we are looking for, this particular one is under cards, build, field, effect. All right, and then there is an effect appender factory, which is this one here, and there are a number of other factories that will be sitting at different levels. So this modifier source factory sits in the modifier folder, and it's just the container for the definitions of all the different modifiers. There will be similar ones for requirements. There will be a requirement factory in here. Yeah, requirement factory. So if we were making a brand new requirement, or rather porting over an existing one from the Java side, that's where we'd stick it. The other ones get a little more complicated. Filter is actually just this enormous giant, like rather than having separate classes for each of these, they're just defined directly in the factory itself. So that one's a little more, I don't know, more finicky in some ways and less finicky in others. But so in our case, since we are adding a brand new modifier, we are going to go ahead and be adding that to this modifier section. And typically what I end up doing is just copy pasting an existing one. I bet the archery total one is one that might make a good copy fodder. So we are going to call this does not add to archery total modifier. Or just does not add to archery total, I think. Lop the modifier part off, just like the rest of these are doing. And then we are going to want to be taking a filter.
So did you rename archery total or add a new one?
I added a new one. I copied it and then pasted it, and then it said, well, what do you want to rename the new pasted one? And then
Then it would be a new Java class.
a new Java class, yeah. But so all you have to do is like, I'll go right here. You can say copy or just Control C like I did, and then paste or Control V, and then that gave us here this this dialog. And so you give it the new name of what you want it to be, and it will automatically handle the rest for you.
I was just trying to figure out how you got where you got.
Yeah, sorry. Sometimes there's things that you just don't even think about. So it does not add to archery total. All we're gonna want on that is a filter, I think. And this is one where I'm trying to think through the ramifications while I'm here on the recording, but I think that the only thing that you want is something that is a filter. Oh, wait, no. We're going to want a requires field as well, because we want this to be conditional, that it only kicks on in certain situations. So in this case, because of the one that we copied, it already had handling for a requires field. We're going to go ahead and delete the handling for these amounts and these sides. And then we're going to want to find a, actually we'll hop over to the appender here for the does not add to archery total, and we'll probably copy some of the things that they've got. So we're going to grab the filter, and actually let me put these on 2 different sides so that we can see them all at once. And we can probably close some of these. I've got way too many classes open. I work on some complicated problems that have lots and lots of things. Okay, so our new one here on the left does not add to archery total, which is a modifier, whereas this is an effect that is just pretty much always on. Actually, let me think. I think from a pure organization standpoint, this is a modifier, so surely it should go in the modifier section. But on the other hand, I think that we can actually just add the requires to this, rather than getting into the weeds of adding a brand new concept. So let's go ahead and do that. So we're gonna slap in the requires, get that to match up, and then requirement condition. Yes, okay.
I'm not going to try to just copy this down as you're doing it.
Yeah,
this is paste it on get when you're done.
This actually does legitimately get into the weeds. I'm trying to figure out exactly how to get the JSON to talk properly with the Java that exists. This is probably going to have to be one of those effects that I deal with. Okay, I'm going to go ahead and delete this because I don't think that that's going to be the way I do it. Or maybe it will be after I've had more than 30 seconds to think about it. But then I believe if we hop over to some of these other effects and find one that has a requires, we will just be able to copy the handling that it does for that. Add trigger. So there's one. So we'll hop over to add trigger and hope it's not too complicated. Okay, yeah, that's fairly straightforward. Well, straightforward to me who have done a few of these. Wait a minute. Yeah, okay. So that's actually what we want to do. We want to get requirements. Well, this is really getting into the weeds. I'm going to go ahead and let's just undo everything we've done here. Save it, and we'll just hop onto the next section and be aware of the fact that this is not working at the moment. So actually, if we hop back over to our test, oh come on, don't go over there. So let's give this test a proper name. So let's go ahead and say the very first thing that we're testing is while Haldir bears a ranged weapon, each valiant alpha strength +1. Haldir grants strength bonus to valiant elves while bearing ranged weapon. And so now I'm going to go ahead and copy paste this whole thing, and we will change this to does not contribute to archery total while bearing ranged weapon. And so now we will have effectively cut this in two so that we're testing two different things. So I'm going to extract all the things that had to do with the archery total and just cut them out. So we don't need our runner anymore. And we can actually just successfully end our test right here. Now, ideally, we would have multiple elves besides Haldir. And so once we've actually coded up some of those Valiant Elves, we'll probably want to come back here and add at least another one so that we can double check and make sure that it's not applying just to Haldir himself. It should apply to all other Valiant Elves as well. But we just don't have them.
All that will entail is quite literally going to a bunch of the Naths and slapping a keyword Valiant into every single one of them.
Right. Oh, and in fact, yeah. So I'm gonna have to do that for the errata. Yes, that is something.
That's going to be just sort of mass errata. You can say, "Hey, we're doing this," and do it.
Yep.
Because
yeah.
it's
So
a relatively
once that
minor
is
change.
done, yeah, we'll have to come in and we'll have to throw one of them in here and do the exact same thing as we're doing with Haldir. We'll just add an additional line where we are checking to make sure that that Nath is also increased, but the Greenleaf, a non-Valiant Elf, does not get increased. And so that I think would then cover that entire section. That one is then all taken care of. So we're going to skip over the ranged weapon part, and so actually for the ranged, I'm going to take off all the things that had to do with the strength, so we're actually not even including Greenleaf anymore, which means, so you have to be careful.
You do want to include Haldir still.
Yeah, so you do want to include Haldir still. Did I accidentally?
Yeah, you got rid of because you did it in the
that's
same
right, yeah.
statement.
So we just want to get rid of Greenleaf there, get rid of Greenleaf here. We still want Haldir himself and the bow. And so actually, since we're not doing the strength thing anymore, we can say scene.freeps attach cards to, and so first we give the bearer, so in this case it tells us that the bearer's first there. So first we give him Haldir and we are putting the bow straight on him. And so this way we don't have to worry about mucking about with the whole get things right with making choices. But to my point though, now that Greenleaf is no longer there, if we were to still use that method of having the bow in the hand and playing it, there would no longer be a choice because Gemp would notice that there's only one valid target and it would automatically do it. So this would cause an error if we were to leave that in and still be playing the card from hand. So you do have to be a little careful when you are cutting things out like that. But anyway,
you're not expecting 0.
Yeah, so it should actually be legitimately be 0. And so this test should now fail, and it won't actually work until we get onto it later and get that all figured out. And so now, for the last little bit, each time an elven possession is about to be discarded by a card effect, you may exert Haldir to prevent that. So this can get a little lorry to figure out. So we're going to have to figure out a card that discards bows or discards some sort of weapon. Let's see.
Isengard Smith is one that pops to mind.
Yeah.
Discards a possession. Or weapon if you got 5 companions sitting out.
Discard a weapon. Yeah, okay, that might actually be perfect. So we are gonna hop in here. Oh, I kept that really tiny. But yeah, so that one particular test is still failing, as we expect. So besides the runner, and actually, come to think of it, let's just replace the runner with the smith because we didn't actually need anything that the runners
offered.
Yeah, we didn't need specifically a Moria Goblin or anything like that, so we will just keep things a little tidy here. Now this is going to require, now that I have changed that, I'm going to want to go in and change my code up here that did require the runner. We're going to specifically change that, and then if you hold down Shift F6, that will allow you to rename things like that are all over the function. It'll refactor it, and now it will automatically detect that, okay, Smith was renamed, or runner was renamed to Smith, so replace it in all the places. Okay, so now we're going to make ourselves a third test, and this one is going to be Haldir trigger. Let's see. on Elven. I've already forgotten what the wording was. Elven possession is about to be discarded by a card effect. Okay. On Elven possession discard to exerts to prevent. Alright, so we are going to put that bow on Haldir. We are going to stick the smith on the table. And then, rather than skipping to the archery phase, we are going to skip all the way to the recruit phase. And then we will be able to use the Isengard Smith's ability. So first we have to have the Free People's player pass their action, and then it will be the Shadow player's action. So just to make sure, we are going to assert that the Shadow action available. Just to make sure that we don't get ourselves twisted around, we are going to make sure that the Shadow player does indeed have the Isengard Smith's ability available for them to use. And then we're just going to say scene.shadow choose action Smith. And so that's going to, whoops, why is that? Shadow, oh, I'm sorry, no. Shadow use card action. The specifics can get a little, yeah. I don't know what the, oh no, okay, so Shadow choose action would have been used in a situation where it was presented with a literal choice where it said, do you want to do X or do you want to do Y? And you would tell it, okay, I want to do X. That's when that particular one would be used. But Shadow use card action is, like the name implies, using the action that is on the card for the Smith. And so the Smith is going to exert, and then it's going to say, exert this minion to discard a weapon. There's only one weapon on the field, so the only thing, so we don't have to choose which weapon. So now at this point, we should assert true. Scene.freeps optional has optional trigger available. So this is just going to check, is there some sort of trigger that you could be responding to? And then we're going to check scene.freeps optional. Oh, Freeps decision. That's what it is. Freeps decision available. And we are just going to put Haldir in here. Now, let me actually go ahead and run this just to demonstrate what exactly we're doing here. So when Gemp asks a user to do something, it's going to present it with a certain amount of text. And oftentimes we want to check specifically what text is being presented. Oh, I didn't save this. So it failed on the step before where it said it has optional trigger available, but I hadn't actually saved the fact that I had uncommented that. So that was a proper, a proper failure.
Hopefully this works.
Oh, let's see. Unable to find effective
God.
type activated trigger. Is it because there's that space there? Another error. Unable to resolve card of type culture. Okay, so this is the exact same thing that we had before, where this just needs to be, oh no, about to discard. Okay, let's double check this. Triggers before card matching filter is discarded from play by a card matching source. So we don't care about the source. So why is it unable to find, unable to resolve card resolve? Okay.
This is probably not a good card to make an example of because it's a very weird one to code.
Right, no, and I think actually it's not talking about this one. I'm pretty sure it's actually reacting to this one. Now, in the specification here, it differentiates between what I call selectors and what I call filters. Filters are simpler.
Okay.
But they also kind of assume that either it's an effect that's affecting everything or it's only going to like catch a reaction. So any kind of card that matches this, like we're going to do some sort of action, which is fine. However, with the effect where you are going to be targeting a specific thing, this is actually utilizing a selector, which is to say you're going to tell Gemp, use this filter, and then if there's more than one, here's how you perform the tiebreaker. So you could tell it to have the user choose. You could say, actually, just do it to everything that triggers on this particular filter. Like if the Isengard Smith's secondary ability, or all free people's possessions if you can spot 5 companions. So in that case, it would say just all possessions, don't even worry about it. In other cases, you might say you're going to use it from memory. You might tell it, oh, just pick a random one from among the ones that were revealed. But my point being, the selectors are very distinct from filters. And unfortunately, when this was first coded, these were not differentiated anywhere. They're all called filter. And this is one of the problems that I need to fix, but it's going to require a lot of manual changes. Where we're going to go in and eventually, instead of all of them saying filter, I will say make it a selector, so that it is very clear to the user that, okay, this one now needs to be choose. Yeah, choose will be fine, because this is going to be, hang on. Okay, this is actually going to need to be a memory thing, but we'll cross that bridge when we get there. But for now, I think if we change this to a selector as opposed to a filter, I believe that's going to cause this to start working. But let's see. Nope. Unrecognized fields. Oh, whoops. I left my wish in here. For now, that will unfortunately just have to still be called filter, even though there's a collision. Okay, we see no errors. Yeah, so that was it. It was choking on the difference between a filter and a selector. It was getting a filter when it expected an entire selector, which again, that's something we need to fix. But for now, that's not where we're at. So right now, the Free People's player is about to react, or has been presented with a choice, basically. It's going to be saying discard Elven Bow, optional is about to responses. So we know. So actually, what we want to say here is we want to say that the text should be discard Elven Bow. Like we are specifically reacting to that specific thing. I don't think any of the rest of this. Yeah, we're not going to worry about that. Okay, so now that we know that we are at this spot and that we know that this is the specific kind of decision that we are being given, we are now going to say scene.freeps accept optional trigger. So you've been presented with the question, do you want to do this? And we're going to say yes, we do in fact want to do that. If you want the opposite, then you would say scene.freeps decline optional trigger. And that would do the opposite, depending on what exactly it is you're testing. So now that that happens, based on the text of what we have here, each time an Elven possession is about to be discarded by a card effect, you may exert Haldir to prevent that. So we need to check a couple of things before we run into this. So first, we want to check the vitality on Haldir. So right now, he should have 3 vitality. So we're going to make sure that his vitality is equal to 3. And we also want to check where the bow currently is. So we are going to say zone.attached. Unfortunately, all currently attached cards are in the same attached zone. But
you can't differentiate who they're attached to?
We can, but not with the zone stuff.
Okay.
But I will check that in just a second here. So bow.getZone. So that's straightforward. We're making sure that it is in the attached zone as opposed to the discarded zone, which it will be in a moment if the smith goes through. And then we are going to say assert same, or well, I think assert equals will also work, just to keep things simple. Haldir bow.get attached to. So now we're going to make sure that these two are the same thing. That the thing that it is currently attached to is Haldir. If, for instance, we were testing some sort of effect like strange looking men that moves things around, we might want to check and see where it goes to. But anyway, and so after we perform this optional trigger, we should find ourselves with an exerted Haldir. So he should have a vitality of 2. The bow should still be in the attached zone, and it should still be attached to Haldir. Oh, and one more thing, actually. the Isengard Smith has 3 vitality. So let's just double check that he himself also got exerted. Just to kind of be sure that the effect itself went through, there was no shenanigans as far as, oh, it hasn't quite completed sort of thing. And then that should be that. Let's run that. And assuming that the code works properly, and which the fact that it is presenting a choice at all, I think that it is going to work. But let's see. Oh, let's see. Isengard Smith get vitality. Oh boy. So, because our archery total stuff is not currently working, an arrow shot went through.
Oh.
So,
right.
it failed this particular one. So we just need to leave ourselves a note. Once archery ability is fixed, update this value. So the Smith starts with only 2 vitality.
Yeah.
Okay,
It'll be
right,
enough
yeah,
to activate
so,
his trigger, so it doesn't really matter.
Yeah, it doesn't. So we're gonna actually move that up here and say that, okay, so he has 2, and then he goes down to 1. And then we don't need this secondary check over here. All right, so let's rerun that. And obviously, if you move lines of text around, it will no longer be highlighting the correct line anymore. You have to run it again to see what happens. And hey, it works! All right, so I hadn't actually looked too close at this, but it looks like everything you have in here works properly. We have an activated trigger, which is to say like a response trigger. Yeah, if the ranged weapon is about to be discarded that is an elven culture, then you can exert self, which is to say Haldir, to prevent that discard. Now this probably needs to get fixed a little bit. So about to discard, let's double check that. That does not have a memorize. Activated trigger. So let's look at prevent discard. Does that give us any information? So I would have thought, I'm going to have to look in here. I don't have documentation for that one yet. Oh. Come on. Prevent card effect depender. Choose card to prevent effect on. Okay, never mind. I guess that it just works, which I wasn't quite expecting. I thought that we were going to have to tell it, all right, detect that elven bow, memorize it for later, and then later reference it in this. But no, I guess that this automatically is applying an additional filter on top of what we have here, and it is automatically only talking about the ones that got discarded. So for instance, if like 5 different things were being discarded all at once, this here would allow us, this would automatically filter it down to just those 5 things and then filter it further to just the ones that match this. So looks like it did our work for us. Awesome. Yeah, so you did 2/3 of this pretty much correctly. This one's, more complicated, which is not your fault. So I'm going to have to go in and add support for that to the JSON. This will happen frequently, especially in some of our cards where we are inventing brand new effects, like the one on Erkenbrand. There is nothing in the game currently that changes the number of, does not alter the rule of 9. So I'm going to be adding stuff that will conditionally alter the rule of 9. But yeah, that's pretty much it in a nutshell. Just write these tests. This allows you to really get into the guts of Gemp, especially when you are stopping on the breakpoints and inspecting what it is doing specifically right now. It can help a little bit to look through the generic card test helper, which is being referenced on all the test cases. That's this thing up here where it is defining the deck. This is really kind of a mess. It's got a bajillion helper functions, and the reason that there's so many of them is because a lot of times, like, the underlying decision that's happening on the server side is exactly the same, but our context is different. So like, for instance, Free People's player choosing to move or choosing to stay is going to look exactly the same as declining an optional trigger, for instance. I don't know where that other function is. But yeah, so this just makes things a little bit cleaner and easier to understand what specifically is going on. So I would highly recommend that if you're just trying to figure out, well, what's an action that I could do, you might just have to hit scene dot and then just start scrolling. Try to see if there's any like things that you might type. That you might type in to filter it down. There might be something related to cards where you just type in Frape's card and it will automatically filter down things that specifically call out cards. Lots of stuff. But I've coded in most actions that you can possibly perform as a user in the client. And besides the fact that this makes development of your JSON card much easier, this makes testing in the future so much easier. The fact that, how long would it have taken you to do just one of these tests in the UI? Going out and building an actual deck that had to be legal, it's going to have 60 actual cards in it, and then you got to sit down and draw cards until you have the specific ones that you're trying to do. It would take forever. I've done that myself. That's why I don't do it anymore.
Yeah.
So this just makes testing effort in the future so much easier.
Now, when I have a JSON card done, if I want to put that onto the private instance of Gemp, do I just use the reload JSON card definitions?
If you're talking about your local one, then yes. Once you are done, you will just be able to go in. I've got the live one here. Yeah, you'll just go into the admin panel if you've made yourself admin, and you should just be able to click on reload JSON card definitions. Now, I did mention this in text earlier, but if you do this and you accidentally have a typo or something and it causes one of those compilation failures, that will permanently break the server if you use this option here. As if so if you do end up accidentally doing that and you realize, oh darn, there was a typo, I need to go fix that real quick, then you're just going to have to restart the entire container. You're not going to be able to do reload again. Reload only works.
Well, it's not too hard to.
No, it's not.
It's not too hard to do it. So.
But if you did have successful compilation, then you can come in here and use reload card definitions, and it's quick and easy. It just redoes it all.
Okay.
And in fact, I think I just spammed everybody with a everyone, we're reloading card definitions. Yeah, sorry. Probably should not use.
No one uses the legacy chat anymore, so.
Well, you'd think that, but I keep finding messages over there.
Not many though.
Yeah. Okay, so I hope that was useful as far as just understanding basics of debugging, basics of unit testing. Although, I mean, this is a little bit separate from what people normally mean by unit testing, but it is very analogous. And so we've just got those. Yep.
The uploading cards to Git when you're done with them.
Oh, yes. Yeah, we can go over that real quick. So, okay, tell me how did you get Gemp on your computer? Did you use Git to pull it down, or did you copy paste like a zip file?
I pulled it off of Git using commands.
Awesome. Yes. Okay. So that will be very straightforward.
On my computer terminal.
Yeah. Now, I recommend using a Git UI of some sort. I know that there are free ones out there like Git source tree. I personally pay for this one called Fork because it's wonderful and amazing. For your benefit, I will avoid using it here, and we'll just take a look at what it would take. So let me see here. I've got my projects. Gemp. Okay. So once you have opened your terminal that's in the correct location, if you hit Git status, it'll show you all the things that are currently different. There's 1,001 things because I have a lot of stuff. Oh wait, hang on. Okay, so you just did a Git pull, right?
It was a while ago, so I don't quite remember.
Okay, so
I think what I did is just followed the instructions in the README,
which probably just said to Git pull. Okay, so we're gonna have to take a step back here.
Pull. Yeah, I did the pull the repository down to the host machine.
Right,
and I did the Git clone. Whatnot.
I don't think that you have rights to the repo. Is the thing. So if you were to try to do a push up, it would knock you back down and say you're not authorized to do this. And we can actually, for your specific case, I think that we can fix that and get you access on here. But for anyone else that's not on the PC, what they would have to do is actually fork Gemp, which is as straightforward as just coming up here to where it talks about fork, and you can create a new fork. And then you would have a new repository that you would then pull from to your local computer, make your changes to them, and then push those changes back up to your fork. And then you would be able to come in here to this pull request tab, and you could create a new pull request from your own personal version of Gemp. And so the base repository is going to be so you would pick your particular repository that you had forked off. It would have the latest commits that you added. This is out of date and a completely different one. And then you would say create pull request, and that would put it here into my inbox, basically ready and waiting for me to merge it in. Now in your case, what it's going to look like more is that you're just going, once we've got you access, you will just create a brand new branch as opposed to a brand new repository entirely. And then you would push changes up to that branch, and then once that's ready, then we would merge it into the master. So let me walk through some of those steps. So once you have the local version handy, you would say git branch to see what branch you are currently on. So you can see all the ones that are currently out there, and you're currently on master. So we are going to say git branch v2. And then if we say git branch again, we will see that there has been a brand new v2 that has been created. So we are going to check it out. So we are going to say git check out v2. And now, if we say git branch, we will see that we are on the v2 branch. Now, because we were on master when we did those commands, it basically made v2 a copy of master. It forked from master at that moment.
Okay.
And now we are going to apply changes, and we're going to push them up. So when I said git status, that told us all the different files that exist. And normally you would want to, so in many cases, what I do is I say git add all. I'm not going to do that in this case because I have a bunch of things in various stages of not readiness. So I'm just going to add a single one. So let's do the, where is the HJSON file? Where did you go? It should just be in there, yeah? Git add, and then Gemp, LOTR, oh dear, Gemp LOTR server, source, test, Java, com, Gempuku, Lotro cards, unofficial, PC, vsets, set underscore vo2, and then it was, what was it, v2 underscore elvin.hjson. Oh, piss. It's probably because, PowerShell automatic, oh, come on. PowerShell automatically changed those over. Could not open directory. No such file or directory. Oh, did not mention any files. Okay, this is getting silly. Oh, because it's capitalized. My goodness, and Gemp is an old Unix thing, so it cares about that sort of thing. Same thing with the directory. Dang! What now? Oh. Wait a minute, no, that's the test. Yeah, that's the test directory. What the heck? I totally copied the wrong thing. Oh, it's right here. This one. Alright, this is ridiculous. Alright. Copy. Git, add, paste, set v2, and then v2 elvin.hjson. Okay, so now if we go over to git status, we will see that there's now one file that has been added here. And again, if you had just done git add dash dash all, it would add everything that you have done, which is normally what I would do. And then once you've done that, then you would say git commit dash m, and you would put in your thing. So we're going to say added Haldir from v2. I'm not going to do this because I want to wait and get the whole thing in. I don't want to have this in here, but you hit enter.
Yeah, it doesn't make much sense to push in a
right,
half,
and then
two-thirds working Haldir in.
Right, exactly. And then once you've
I
committed
should have done what a sane person would do and start at V1, not V1, V201, which would be a Dunlin card. That would be like the easiest thing to code. But I thought, oh, I'll go with the first one that we actually designed, which was Haldir.
It actually doesn't matter. I'm actually perfectly okay with hopping around to find things. It's just yeah.
I know. If I had done it in a more orderly fashion, it would have been a less ridiculous one to code.
Well, yeah, but we didn't know that going in, and that's perfectly okay. But then after you do a commit, then you would come in here and say git push, and then once you enter that, then it will push that new branch all the way up, and we would get it. Now, just to demonstrate, I'm going to show how much easier that is in a UI like this. So I am in my Gemp LOTR repository. I'm going to scroll down until I find the file that I want. I'm going to double click on it, and that automatically stages it. This is the same thing as hitting commit. And then I'm going to come in and I'm going to say added Haldir, and then I could either commit it locally, or I could click on this drop down and say commit and push, and it would do both of them one right after the other. That takes 5 seconds, and it took me like 2 minutes of very awkward typing just to realize that I was typing the wrong damn thing in. I highly recommend searching around and finding a good Git UI, because it makes things so much less arcane. So yeah. Yeah, and then switching branches and adding branches is as easy as just coming in here saying right click new branch. Like, don't have to remember the syntax, don't have to do any of that. You just say, oh yeah, I'm now working in V2. Double click to switch, so I can come over here and say we're going to go to master. I want to stash and reapply. And so now we would immediately find ourselves back on the master branch as soon as this is done switching over. So yeah,
instead of typing in 50 commands, just double click.
Exactly, yeah. Git fork here is easily best in class. It blows every other tool I've ever used out of the water. But there are open source alternatives, like I mentioned. SourceTree is one of them. I believe that.
How much does fork cost?
I think it was $50 or something. I am a professional programmer. I use this constantly. $50 was well worth it, but I can totally understand where that's not necessarily the case for everyone else. But so yeah, SourceTree was one. I believe that Tortoise Git is another one, but that might be Windows only. Actually, yeah, you're on a Mac, aren't you? So yeah, you'll have to do some research on that. Try to find a good locally supported version. But yeah, then once you had that, then it's just a matter of pushing it up, and then once it's in the repository, specifically on a V2 branch, we can't miss that step. It'd have to be on a V2 branch because we don't want to be messing anything up on the main branch while we're figuring some of this stuff out. We will then get it out to one of the playtest instances of Gemp, and we can have other people actually going on and playing with it, including Finarfin and other people.
Yeah.
So yeah, I hope that was useful for you. I hope it's useful to anybody on YouTube watching this. Do you have any other questions?
Nope, I think that pretty much covers it out.
Right on. So like I said, later today I will fix whatever the heck was wrong with this utility, and I will push up. Actually, I'll go ahead and create the V2 branch, and I will push up the boilerplate that will include all of the unit tests already created with just the very basic bare minimal version, and it will include all of these JSON files. Yeah, and so all of them will just have very basic versions that just look like this with just that part.
Okay.
So we don't
and then I'll have to go in and manually add what they actually do.
Exactly, yeah. But at least
as far as I know, we didn't create any blank cards that just are strength and vitality like Decipher did.
Right. I mean, we're always going against those blank cards for the most part. So yeah, I don't see us doing that unless it's a particularly novel keyword or something on it. But and that will automatically take care of all like the naming, the numbering, and all that stuff.
So will the spreadsheet actually transfer the Valiant keyword over? Because I don't think that it would. It would have to look through the first lines of text in the game text, and I'm pretty sure
I'm not 100% certain if I put in any kind of searching like that. You might be right. I think that keyword, it might
Yeah,
be
I think it would be
literally
kind of hard to
anything
code a
the.
parser for that.
Well, yeah, it's one of those things where if I'm able to actually parse it and do it, it can do a lot more for me.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't think that I have keywords in here. I can search to find it, but who cares? You'll see once that's put out whether or not it managed to grab those or not. So yeah, that might be the only two things that you actually have to do is keyword and effects.
Yep. And for most of them, it won't be we have to invent an entirely new function to do everything.
Right, yeah, not most of them. And even in some cases, like this particular one for Haldir, I'm pretty sure that this is something that does exist on the Java side. It just because we've only coded sets 1, 0, 14, 16, 9, and 19. Those are the only ones coded in. So if it's not an effect that's explicitly within those specific sets, it's not exposed on the JSON part. And usually it's a simple matter of finding a card that does that on the Java side, finding out where that effect is, and then just giving it a quick JSON wrapper that tells it, okay, this is what it means. These are the parameters you need to specify. Kind of like I was doing when I very hastily did that. But that requires more thought. Probably a good thing I didn't do it on stream. But I'll probably end up doing that quite a bit as we discover things that are not exposed properly.
Yeah.
And kind of like I pointed out with some of those, stupid differences that are on here, that's one of the things I want to fix. There's several. I have a laundry list of about half a dozen items like that need fixed before I go on a crusade to actually start converting sets 2 and 3 and 4 and so on to JSON.
So if we convert those sets, what good would that do?
So
it would obviously help with debugging the bugs that we know exist and just can't figure out. Start. But
so there's that. There's the fact that I want to do it in a way where I'm writing tests as I go. Ideally, I want to make it so that literally every single card has tests. Like I've got a pretty good number of them for even official cards here on the Fellowship side.
And it could help with errata down the road to just to copy paste and then modify a couple.
So it makes it much easier for us to errata. It makes the entire ecosystem more robust. If we make any changes to the core systems, having these unit tests in place for all these cards, which admittedly is not directly related to the JSON conversion, makes any kind of any sorts of those changes so much easier. Because all I have to do is come over here and say, okay, now that I've made all these changes, let's run these 50,000 tests. Did any of them break? Oh, like these 60 cards broke. Obviously, I need to take another look at it. But actually, one of the big reasons for doing this is that it actually consolidates and centralizes how certain functions work. And let me give you an example of why this is important. One of the errata that I wanted to do was for Horn of Helm, and we were going to add an effect to it where it made the number of Free People's Cultures you could spot -1. But I couldn't do that. And the reason for that is because all the cards that are shadow cards that spot 4 Free People's Cultures to do something awesome, every single one of them is a Java card, and every single one of those had a personal snowflake way of counting up the number of cultures. It was not a shared function. And so for me to implement that card, I was either going to have to go in and edit every single spot 4 cultures cards, or convert them all to JSON, where inherently all those, because you can't write new code, you can only access existing code, they would all inherently go through the exact same function, and there would be one culture counting JSON function that I could then just edit real quick with an additional consideration where it says, oh, and if there's any cards that happen to modify the Free People's Culture count, subtract that here, instead of needing to do it in a dozen different places. So yeah, in a way, there are some things about it that is a little bit wasteful. Like, why would you bother changing the code for literally everything? But getting it all into the same system, I think, will improve performance. It will improve the robustness. There's some good to be had, but yeah, it's not. The average player is probably not going to notice any of it, or rather, they're not going to notice it until we introduce a bug that wasn't there before. And then they'll get real mad. Why are you wasting all this time translating everything? Well, sorry, but I want the system to thrive. I want it to be as robust as possible. So yeah, 926 tests we've currently got. So it has already saved my
Hmm.
bacon.
4 of them failed. That's interesting.
Yeah, so 2 of them are this one, 2 of them are one of the ones I was working on. I have a bunch of stuff that I unfortunately just kind of leave around. I probably shouldn't. Doorway to Doom. I had that big old discussion about Doorway to Doom the other day. That was because of this.
Oh, I
Trying
remember
to
that.
trying to get it all to work. I was like, wait a minute, like this isn't functionality that currently exists. Well, then what is Mount Doom doing? Oh, weird. Why is it doing that? So, yeah. Anyway, yeah. So just let me know if you have any other questions with debugging and
Yep.
whatnot. I'm always willing to help out, help unravel a tricky thing. And if you like this particular one, if you discover a particular function that is just not exposed, yeah, I'll handle those first. But feel free to also to take a crack at it yourself, and I can always massage any changes that you make into something that matches what we've already got. So.
Yep. Yes, thank you for taking the time to walk through all of this.
Yeah, no problem at all. The more people we have actually working on cards, I think, well, the faster that these sets will be able to be made. If it's not just me, so
Yeah, there's more things that you can devote time to instead of just coding cards all day.
yep. And like there was a crunch time during V1. I was not the only one that coded cards. I got a whole lot of help from people that stepped in and helped make the JSON cards back before I had that script. So that was nice as a starter. But then I had to go in and actually debug all of them because every single one of them had errors. And so yeah, that was 2 or 3 weeks where I did nothing but coding cards.
Yeah, I
So
don't think I had signed on at that point, so I didn't get to see all that madness.
Well, now you're a part of that madness. So
Yay! Let's make it less mad.
yeah, exactly.